So my name is Deacon Dennis, Ternes, for those of you who don't know. We've been married for 33 years and been parishioners here at St. Joseph for 32. And things progressed as they always do, and it's been a good journey. Happy to be here. Ultimately came to be called to the permanent diaconate, and you always question whether or not that's a true calling, but I think now that I've been in it for 5 years, I think that was part of God's plan. Certainly called me out of my comfort zone. So, yeah.
What was the first thing that made you feel like you might be called?
It really wasn't on my radar screen in terms of me thinking that I should participate in the diaconate, but it was through our pastor at the time and another deacon at the parish at the time, and then also my mother. All within about a 2-week period of time, they all approached me independently, and I thought, okay, that's maybe something to consider. So I told our pastor that I would consider it, and I could never find a reason not to go forward. That first year is more of an inquiry type period, but certainly going into that first year, midway through probably, I was done discerning and knew that I was going to continue unless someone said no.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So Kim, so tell us a little about your background. You weren't always Catholic, is that correct?
No, I grew up Lutheran. It was confirmed in that religion. It was the Missouri Synod, so it was somewhat similar to, liturgically we'll say, to the Catholic Church. Right. So that stepping into the Catholic Church was not a hard path for me. And I found the Catholic religion to be much more fuller, which is why I stay Catholic. I sometimes say that I joined for the wrong reasons because we got married, but I stay for all the right reasons.
So you came into this, you got married to Dennis at the time, who's a Catholic. So then what was the journey like for actually, we'll get some more from both of you as far as the diaconal journey. So now, what was your take when he came to you and said, hey, I'm thinking of, how did that play out? How did you indicate that to her that you were thinking about it?
Well, I went home after Father Gossman at the time asked me, and it was on a Sunday morning. I remember it like it happened yesterday. And I think I was here by myself. I can't remember exactly, but anyway, I got home and I broke the news to Kim and the family, because the girls were probably teenagers at the time. And they said, sure. It just seemed like it should be the right thing to do. So just went, and it took about it took a month or so that I was supposed to think about it and then get back with Father, which I did. And the rest is history, as they say.
And then now, so the wives of the deacons are very involved with the process, aren't they? What was that like for you stepping into that then, now that he's on this journey? Were you prepared for it, or was it a little bit of like, wow, I actually have a bit of a journey here too?
Well, when he came home and mentioned that, it was Father Gossman at that time, wanted him to consider it, it didn't necessarily come as a shock to me, because the girls and I had seen him growing in his faith at home, and he was sharing with us, and you could see that there was a call there. So, that part of it didn't surprise me. My calling in it, I do believe that the wives are called to, because we're married to our husbands, and there must be a reason why we were brought together.
Right.
So I've often felt that the wives are also called, and
so that was in 2008, 2007, probably, where I was approached for that. But if you go back 10 years prior to that, I was just as shocked as anyone. I just, 10 years prior to that, there would have been no way. I was so uneducated. So, I couldn't have strung 2 sentences together as to why I was Catholic. There'd have been no way.
So how did God light the fire in you to grow in your faith then?
there was an associate pastor in the mid-90s who was here at the time, and he encouraged everyone to buy a Catechism of the Catholic Church, the old tan version of that book, and there was a pile of them.
Here's the green version.
Yes, here's the green version. And there was a pile of them laying in the entry of the church on a table, and I walked out and I bought that thing and took it home, and I couldn't put it down. It was just an eye opener. It shocked me, as to what I was reading, and that was the beginning.
Did you feel like super spiritually nourished as you were reading?
Absolutely.
That was my experience when I read it the first time.
It was just like taking a shower. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
It was just an amazing thing, and I recognized immediately that, we had some things, going on in our lives that it's like, here it is, this is what we're told to believe, and we're not believing that. So living that out. So it was just an eye opener, and I couldn't get enough. That's still probably the biggest thing in my life that, caused me to, do that metanoia, turn around. You're facing one way one day, and the next you're facing another. And it was just.
And would you say there might be a lot of people out there watching who God maybe has something special in mind for them that maybe they don't even realize yet because
There's
they just
no
haven't, their eyes haven't been opened yet for that.
Exactly. I mean, to me, it started with an education,
Right.
And in my faith, and from that point forward, it just accelerated. And there's some problems associated with that also, because she was not where I was. She wasn't reading that thing every day, day in and day out. So, some of that got a little, questionable, as we went forward. I was accelerating at a rapid rate, and she was sort of hanging back, watching along with the kids. But, you recognize that.
And that's an important thing. I think maybe let's talk about that, because there could be people who might watch who will be in that situation. What would you recommend? Like, what was it like for you, and then how would you suggest dealing with it for people who are like, maybe someone's suddenly growing in their faith and everyone else is like, whoa, wait a second here.
Well, you can go ahead, but.
Yeah. Some of that, it was hard at that time. I was also I was involved with, youth faith formation. It was called Religious Ed at that time. And I was teaching classes, and I was actually learning my faith somewhat through teaching some of these classes. So I was, like you said, I wasn't as up to speed on Catholicism as he was. So, but I was learning and growing, and there were some bumps in the road, because there's a lot of things in that catechism that you just don't know until you start reading it. And the more you read them, the more beautiful you find the faith is. That's that depth, that fullness.
Yeah. And I know people can't see me, but they hear my voice. I know even as a cradle Catholic, I struggled with, like, when I came to terms with, like, some Marion things, which I think is common. So did you have any theological things that you hesitated with, like, I wasn't necessarily on board with that idea, but I realized I'm the one who has to change? Did you have any of those types of experiences?
It wasn't that I was opposed to him. It just brought light to him. I haven't had an aunt, or still have two aunts that are religious sisters. And one of them was very devoted to the Blessed Mother. And I saw her growing up in that devotion, and it didn't really make a lot of sense to me at the time. It couldn't really, shed any light on it in terms of meaning in my life. But then as I learned more and more, it's like, okay, I get this. It's this whole idea of different ways to approach our faith, that big umbrella, and there's room for everyone under that umbrella. Yeah. And so that's the way I approached it. And it was just a beautiful thing to finally make sense of all these things that I had seen growing up and never really learned, possibly.
Right. So what would be, if there was one thing in the whole journey that really just stands out as the most helpful turning point or growing point, what is that one thing, if there is one?
There is one for me, and Kim can speak for herself, but after I had been immersed in this learning, someone, through the persistence of a friend from work, he convinced me to go on a Christian Experience Weekend, CEW, a retreat for men, men's only.
Right.
And I reluctantly went, but that was an eye-opener because I'm a very visual learner, you know, in terms of, okay, I need to, you know, add some flesh to this as to how I begin to live my life because I have all this knowledge. So what does that look like? And there were a bunch of Catholic men there that were living it out. They were businessmen, high-powered businessmen, lawyers, you know, you name it, engineers, and they were living out what I was reading in this book. And that just made total sense to me. The light went on, and that it was from that point forward that I really started to accelerate. You know, and as a result of that CEW weekend, I just became fully immersed in serving the parish. So, you know, reader, extraordinary minister, doing whatever, men's ministry and so forth. And that, that was really a turning point for me. And then, as you would expect, people notice that. So our pastor was noticing that, that I was involved in a lot of stuff, got involved in RCIA. That was another big one. And they noticed that and then maybe assumed that I was a candidate for the permanent diaconate.
Nice.
So,
Yeah. How about for you? Did you have any?
For me, probably several turning points. I also went to the CEW for the women after him, and I was somewhat reluctant too, just like he was, because he kept saying, "You got to go, you need to go." It was very enlightening, you know, to be with the other women that supported, you know, the Catholic faith. I also work at Linmar, and I was in a room full of women that we were able to actually at school talk about our faith. We were all at the same stage in our lives where we were helping to teach youth at our different churches, not all Catholic. And it was just neat to see that all come together, that you could actually talk your faith and, you know, learn from each other. And it didn't have to be all Catholic, you know, it was Christian. It was good. It was a good experience to, you know, and it started to get me able to talk about my own faith. And like I said, I was learning my faith too. And I think one of the bigger things was the diaconate classes themselves. The more I learned about the Catholic faith, that depth of the Catholic faith, why the church believes these things, teaches these things, I saw the beauty of it. And it was that beauty that, you know, has really drawn in and given me the confidence now to talk about my faith. I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for that.
And we appreciate you doing that. And I think, you know, it's such an important point because I can say the same thing. Like, I was reluctant to even get involved as a sponsor for RCIA when I was coming into my faith, but it was the best thing because just like with you on the retreats, you end up getting so much out of it. And if anyone's watching, I think that example, I hope they take home that, yeah, you're a human being. You were a little reluctant, but wow, what a blessing it was.
Yeah. You know, the Holy Spirit is always waiting to tap you on the shoulder, but if you're not going to sit around long enough for the Holy Spirit to do that, you know, it's going to be a long time coming. But I think in an environment like that, at a retreat, you know, everything is just geared toward, you know, okay, be open. You know, that's ultimately, you know, what we have to do.
So then what would, I think it's kind of obvious, but just state clearly for people watching, well, if someone's feeling a tug to get involved but a reluctance, what's the next thing? That should they push themselves through that reluctance and say, I got to do this? I mean, what's your take on that? What do you
absolutely. I think without a doubt, you know, push through it and take that big step. It is a big one ultimately, and if you can find someone who is sort of on that same path, maybe who's a little more advanced to kind of show you how it's done, how to get involved, you know, what it's like. It's not scary or anything like that, even though it may seem like that at first. But don't be afraid. You know, it's takes
Is their
courage.
life is their life going to be worse afterwards?
No. it'll get a little awkward for a while because all of a sudden, you know, at work you may sit in a totally secular environment, but
Yeah.
now all of a sudden you just have this fire burning within you and you want to let it out. And you know, that may be contrary to what you're allowed to do it in a workplace, but nevertheless, there's it's all good. There's just no negatives whatsoever.
There's something more worth living for there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Deacon Dennis and Kim, I thank you so much for joining us today and sharing some of your story with us. So we thought we were going to end the video, but I just want to remind you, if you want to be like them and come share your story and inspire others, we invite you to do that. Thank you again, Deacon Dennis, Kim. High five me, yeah!
Okay.
How long have we been parishioners? Let's get the number right before we start.
32 years we've been parishioners here.